morning, everybody. I'm Karen Greco.
I'm Mackenzie Rowe.
And we're here today to talk about social variation, slang, and jargon. Just to touch a little bit on what the textbook says, Zahn and Adams indicate that slang is typically associated with a community, whereas jargon is typically associated with a profession or an activity. Slang is also thought to be more generational. So this, So as you can see by this comic, this is kind of evidence of how slang is generational. At the end of the comic, the little boy is sure he's got something new and exciting with his new words for his dad. And his dad's response is with the slang from his generation.
Okay. So now we're going to play a little game. You guys are going to use the little signs that I've passed out, and we're going to give you words, and as a team you have to kind of figure out if you think it's slang or jargon, or possibly both. So we'll be giving them one by one and writing them on the board too, so you can see like the spelling and everything. Am I the first one? Yeah. Okay, so amped is the first word.
Yellow was first.
Oh,
yeah. Okay. Well, second.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so the consensus is pretty much that it is slang.
Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, it's both.
Yeah. So you could have raised both for that one.
Both. And because of that, everybody can have a treat. You want to pass? Oh, we like your treat. Okay, so the next word that we have is creeper. Yes, it is slang. Does anybody know what it means?
Alright, are you guys ready for the next one?
It's mine. I never like it, but this will be
Okay. FaceTime.
Interesting.
Okay. Yes, that is also yellow teams. That's also both.
FaceTime in business means face to face.
Yeah.
But the slang word is
With the iPhone. FaceTime.
oh my. One of my favorites. So how about this?
Thank you.
Anybody know what that is? Cat 5? Very good. Everybody got it right. You all can have candy.
Does anyone actually know what that is? No. It's an Ethernet cable.
Started at the computer.
Okay. Next one.
Hello.
Hella. Hella.
Oh. Yes.
Correct. Everyone's
Yay.
correct. And one last one.
Okay, so the last one is slash S. Anybody know what that is? What do you think it is? Jargon. Oh, interesting. Okay, we found that in the Slang dictionary, and it comes at the end of a text message when someone wants to be sarcastic.
Oh. Why didn't I know this before?
Because we all now.
But I won't offend people anymore in text messages.
Oh, yes, sarcasm.
So is everybody kind of passing around that bowl of candy?
I brought out the candy, right?
Got candy?
Can I go on one?
Yeah, you
All right. Good job, guys. You're all superstars.
Oh, I'm so sweet. I really do.
All right. So here are how the definitions of jargon They first originated in Old French in 1340, and then in 1700 it became, more of a popular thing. In 1340 it was kind of just like as you can see in the beginning, it was nonsense or gibberish, so kind of meaningless. And then in the 1700s it had more meaning, but as you can see it became like kind of a rude connotation with it. What else was I going to say? Oh yeah, and then also in the 1700s, it went from a nonsense, gibberish kind of thing to a mixture of languages. And yeah, we thought it was interesting that in the first definition of jargon, it says that it's similar to the sound of chattering of birds. And that's something that we'll touch on again later.
Okay, so if you look at the evolution of the word slang, it didn't come about until 400 years after the word jargon. And it actually has the word jargon in the definition from the 1800s. So also one of the interesting things about this is that it's debated where it came from. Some people think it came from Old French. There are other experts that think that it came from Norway. Old Norse is another older language that you have heard of. And this is the word. Anybody want to give it a try and pronounce that word? So this is the Norwegian word that people think that the word slang came from.
Okay, so these are the two current definitions of the word. The things that we highlighted in red are really where they overlap. And as you can see, they're both kind of restricted. They have that element where slang, you're only going to understand it if you're, can understand that concept or if you're in that group. And jargon is really used more in the professional world. So if you're not in that specific profession, you probably won't understand what they're talking about. Some other differences, slang is usually used, in formal setting, which is pretty much the opposite of jargon, where you're in that professional business kind of world. And as we mentioned before with our comment, slang is generational. And yeah, they're both, they're restrictive, so that's really what we wanted to highlight here.
So very similar to what you just heard in the last presentation, slang can be regional, and it can also be associated with different ethnic groups. It typically travels occasionally by TV, movies, music, so that's when it gets that broader use. And words like bling, I'm sure, which started out as slang, are pretty commonplace now, and I think that just about everybody across the country has heard or may even use that term to describe excessive jewelry.
And that's actually in the dictionary.
Yeah, it's actually in the dictionary right now, but it started as a slang word. And does anybody recognize some of these words? Yeah. Do you use any of them? Do we have anyone that's familiar with any of the Chicano slang? Chicano slang typically comes from the Southwest.
Okay, so this slide kind of touches on industry jargon. It's used, almost every field or profession has its own kind of language. I have examples for each of these. So medical, an example of jargon is a CT scan, a computed tomography scan. And a tomography is a 2 or 3 dimensional sectioning in an image. Injection for legal is in order to stop doing something. For financial, hedge funds, not to be confused with hedging, is a pooled investment to offset risky investments. And then for marketing, brand equity, and that's just the value of a brand name. So it's really interesting how English is used globally in business. So it's interesting that certain languages have adopted jargon from English that they don't have the exact translation in their language. So an example of this, which is kind of surprised me, was computer. So certain other languages, they just say computer, even though it's very much English, and they don't have that same translation. So another thing that we thought was interesting, and Karen found this awesome graphic. Let me see if I can.
I was going to try and drag it, sorry.
There we go. Okay, so it's a keyboard with a bunch of different, abbreviations that are used social media, like Facebooking, tweeting, stuff like that. And then we also connected how, if you guys remember, in the first definition of jargon from 1340, it was defined as like chattering of birds. So we connected that to the Twitter logo, and maybe we are all, while we're tweeting, we're just chattering birds. So that's kind of interesting. Actually, this week, one of my friends texted me and he was like, WYD, and I was like, what is that? Like, what does that mean? And it's like, what are you doing? Which is so obvious after, as he told me that, but at the time I was like, so confused. But do you guys have any examples of like times where that has happened to you? Or maybe yes.
Like African American males text me and they're just like WYA. I'm just like, what does that even mean? And they're just like, where you at? I'm just like,
we'll go around.
Well, so those are like the accepted ones that like generally people know. My parents, when I tried to like teach them like, oh, like some abbreviations of texting, my mom will just like leave out vowels and thinks like leaving out letters in like a word is an abbreviation, but it's like, no, there's a method to it. Like, she'll just leave out vowels and be like, why don't you understand? Or like she thought LOL was lots of love instead of lol.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a common.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like that. My mom texted me one time and she was like, I'm at HH. And I was like, what is HH? She was like, Happy Harry's.
I have a Facebook friend who, whenever it's somebody's birthday, he will just type HBD.
Anyone else? Yeah.
I had a friend text me, are you going today with TODA space Y? And I was like, are you going today what? And he's like, no, are you going to the Y? And I was like, no! He was totally confused.
Alright, very good. Yeah. Oh, now it's Susan. Alright. I think if you just said, yeah.
Okay, so we thought we would end today with a quote from George Orwell. Can somebody read the quote? Anybody? Volunteer?
Never use a foreign phrase, a scientific word, or a jargon word if you think of an everyday English equivalent.
So basically, what he was saying is make sure you use those words, if at all, in an appropriate place and time. Can anyone in here think of a time when you or maybe a friend used a word that maybe they shouldn't have and you wish they could reel that back in?
It wasn't me, but there's a thing going around on Facebook. It's like a parent that they told their child that someone had died and then said LOL at the end of it for like lots of love rather than laugh out loud.
Well, I work at a restaurant back home, and one of the like jargon that we use is if the busser is cleaning your table and he's setting it, we say he's flipping the table. So when they're talking to a server, you're like, oh, Joey's flipping the table, like, right. So, like, one time I was with this other hostess, and she was talking to, like, the customer, and the customer was like, oh, like, clean our table, and she was like, oh, yeah, it'll just take a couple minutes, my busboy's just flipping your table. And she thought he meant, like, flipping the table over, and they were like, what? And I was like, no, you're cleaning the table.
Yeah, the restaurant business definitely has a lot of that. It's definitely very evident. Okay, so kind of just our last little closing exercise. Can you guys think of like maybe better words that you could use for these slangs or jargon, kind of like a standard English equivalent? Yeah.
For amped, I guess I would say excited.
Yeah, definitely. Good.
how love could be like hairy.
Yeah.
Cooper could just be a creepy person.
Yeah.
What can you say politically correctly?
Nerd coming out. Cooper's also like a definite.
Jargon, like
So you think Cooper is some cool thing, oh, the green thing that explodes if you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions?